It is 6:06 on Tuesday, January 7th, 2025, and I'm calling this meeting of the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Education meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10-4-6 et seq., adequate notice has been given. The time, date, location, and to the extent known of the agenda of this meeting was published in the Hunterdon County Democrat on October 23rd, 2024, and the Star Ledger on October 24th, 2024. In addition, notice of the meeting has been posted at the North Hunterdon High School and Voorhees High School, provided to the municipal clerks of Bethlehem Township, Califon Borough, the Town of Clinton, Clinton Township, Franklin Township, Glen Gardner Borough, Hampton Borough, Highbridge Borough, Lebanon Township, Tewksbury Township, and Union Township, as well as any other interested parties, and posted on the district website. Fire exits are located in the front and back of this room, and if alerted to fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest smoke-free exit. At this time, please silence all cell phones. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The official election results are attached to the agenda for Angela and Puzo Deeding for Califon Borough and Tewksbury Township, Daniel Spanton for Clinton Township and Lebanon Borough, Tara Marie Hintz for Lebanon Township and Highbridge Borough, and Richard Lordy for Union Township. So congratulations to all four of you. Congratulations. Some returning and some new, so welcome. I'd like to administer the oath of office at this time. So if those four people would join us at that backdrop.
There's my answer. That's all right. Yeah. You're tall. Stand behind everybody.
Sorry. Oh, that's you. One at a time?
I state your name.
Hold on. Come on up, buddy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I know. All right, you get to stand right here next to that. I'm going to ask everybody to raise their right hand.
Okay.
All that is
Okay, yeah, we'll do it together.
yeah, we want to do that together. That's perfect.
Well, that's we got everyone. That'd be sure. Look at that. It's actually that's 18. The big one. It's perfect. Okay. Right, do you need to see us? Or? Okay.
The camera's coming this way, so you got my side.
Okay. Is this matching the agenda side? I'm sorry. I, Tara Marie Hintz, Angela Anthuso-Dini,
Daniel Spanton. Richard Lordy.
do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
I, Tara Marie Hintz, Angela Anthuso-Dini,
Daniel Spanton. Richard Lordy.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 1TA 12-1, and that I faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you.
Nice.
You don't follow directions, do you?
That's right, that second one just closed.
Yeah, just.
Once you get started, it'll.
Exactly.
We just, yeah, we want, it was something 12, 1, 2.
It's like synchronized swimming.
Good job.
Congratulations.
So at this time, we'll take roll call. Ms. Cagno?
Here.
Mr. Chapman?
Here.
Dr. Dini?
Here.
Ms. Gallo?
Here.
Ms. Hintz?
Here.
Ms. Cotran?
Here.
Mr. Lordy?
Here.
Mr. McIsaac?
Here.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
Ms. Salino?
Here.
Mr. Spanton?
Here.
And Ms. Beato?
Here.
Great, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to call for nominations for the office of President of the Board of Education, and I'll just do a quick synopsis of how this will kind of play out. Is any board member may place a member's name in nomination, and a second is not required. Elections for each office will be conducted by a roll call vote when the nominations for that office is closed. The candidate receiving the votes of the majority of the board members present and constituting a quorum will be elected to the office. In the event that no candidate receives a majority vote, we will then do subsequent voting and will repeat the process until a majority vote is obtained. So at this time, can I call for any nominations on the floor for board president?
I'd like to nominate Brendan McIsaac.
I'd like to nominate Kim Salino, representing Bethlehem Township and Hampton Borough.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none.
Discussion.
We can have discussion if you'd like.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something.
Yeah.
The reason for my nomination was with the upcoming strategic planning, I think it's critical that we have somebody as strong as Brendan. He has extensive experience as not only as a board member, but as an educator and administrator. In doing my research, I wrote some stuff down. I think everyone here knows about his integrity, and it's earned him the respect of his peers on this board. He has a long and distinguished record of service. From 2012 to 2020, he served on the Glenn Gardner Board of Education, including 6 years as president from 2015 to 2020. He's been with Hunterdon Central since 1997 as an English teacher, and he's been English supervisor since 2007. He was also named 2014 Supervisor of the Year for New Jersey. And again, just because of the strategic planning, I think it's critical that we have somebody with experience going forward.
Discussion.
Any further discussion? Okay, then I will conduct a roll call for each person individually. So I will start with Mr. McIsaac for his nomination. So Ms. Cagno.
No.
Mr. Chapman.
Yes.
Dr. Dini.
No.
Ms. Gallo.
No.
Ms. Hintz.
Yes.
Ms. Cotran.
Yes.
Mr. Lordy,
No.
Mr. McIsaac,
Well, after that intro, I can't vote no. So I have to vote yes.
Ms. Reyes,
No.
Ms. Salino,
No.
Mr. Spanton,
Yes.
and Ms. Beato.
Yes.
And for Ms. Salino, Ms. Cagno,
Yes.
Mr. Chapman,
No.
Dr. Dini,
Yes.
Ms. Gallo,
Yes.
Ms. Higgs,
No.
Ms. Cotran,
No.
Mr. Lordy,
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac,
No.
Ms. Reyes,
Yes.
Ms. Salino,
Yes.
Mr. Spanton,
No.
and Ms. Beato.
No.
Just have to do a quick tally here. I have 6.3 for Ms. Salino. I'll just double check it. And 5.7 for Mr. McIsaac. So Ms. Salino,
Congratulations.
Can we wait until?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Come on up.
I didn't know if you were doing.
This is your meeting now.
Just put my things. Hey, you're moving me out already?
That's it.
You got the big seat now.
Thanks. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
So you'll just like set it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Vice President.
what I could do this time is just take one roll call and just ask for the individual's name instead of 2 times, so
Whichever's easiest.
we will do it this time. If there's 2 candidates, we can do it.
Okay. Okay, we're moving forward with number 7, election for office of vice president. Any board member may place a member's name in nomination. A second is not required. Elections for each office will be conducted by roll call vote when the nominations for that office are closed. The candidate receiving the votes of a majority of the board present and constituting a quorum will be elected to the office. In the event no candidate receives a majority vote of the board members present and constituting a quorum, the procedure, including nominations and subsequent voting, shall be repeated until someone receives a majority vote of those board members present and constituting a quorum. At this time, any nominations for vice president on the floor?
I nominate Nicole Gallo.
I'd like to nominate Tara Hens.
Any other nominations? Katie, do you want to take them together?
Sure. Yeah, we can do it together this time.
I just wanted to discuss it. I just wanted to provide some input on that too. I think Tara did an excellent job last year for us as vice president. I think she provides a very balanced, common sense point of view in looking at the various issues. She also has an excellent background to assist us with the strategic planning as well as it relates to facilities and the other work that we do now that John is no longer with the board. So I think that she would be an excellent candidate for us to consider for vice president.
Any other comments, discussion? Thank you, Beth.
So this time I'll just ask which candidate you're voting for so we don't have to go through it twice because you technically have one vote. It has to be for one or the other. So I will start with Ms. Cagno.
Nicole Gallo.
Mr. Chapman.
Tara.
Dr. Dini.
Nicole Gallo.
Ms. Gallo.
Nicole Gallo.
Ms. Hibbs.
Tara Hens.
Ms. Cotray.
Tara.
Mr. Lordy.
Nicole Gallo.
Mr. McIsaac.
Tara Hens.
Ms. Freyes.
Nicole Gallo.
Ms. Salino.
Nicole Gallo.
Mr. Spanton.
Tara Hens.
And Ms. Beato.
Tara Hens.
Just total Ms. Hintz is 5.7. Again, just double checking. Is Ms. Gallo at 6.3. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Set up first, or get set up. Presentation.
At this time, we will have a presentation from Comegno Law Group regarding our School Ethics Act and the Code of Ethics for all school board members.
Sounds good.
Can I ask a question real quick? Are you able to share your slide deck?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
If you could actually pass one, take one pass down, I'll send these down that way as well. Thanks, Rich. Can I do that?
No.
Oh,
I
okay.
know. You put
Oh, okay.
from a glasses, Jim.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You got me? Yeah.
That is giant. You can dig it.
Isn't that other guy that's all day?
He's big, he's tall.
Yeah, there's a guy that wears.
Taylor.
Keep the negotiation.
Let people filter out for the ethics presentation. What a shame.
I'm sure they had somewhere else to do.
I'm sure that must be it. It's really a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Just get everybody away.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to our new president and vice president. It's great to see you guys there. And it's great to see everyone who I recognize, and of course, the new faces. My name is Jacob Minton. I am with the Comegno Law Group. I'm one of John Comegno's associates. And today, I get to have the privilege of going over the school board ethics presentation for this year. Something to note is that this presentation does not replace the individual requirements that you guys have to do the school ethics training through, I believe it's school boards that still offers it. You guys still have to do that, unfortunately. I wish I could replace it, but I cannot. So just make sure that you keep that in mind, that that's still done by the deadline. So what I want to do today is I want to, in front of you, you guys have a sheet to sign after the end of this presentation, but the sheet itself is actually very helpful because it lists out the School Ethics Act itself, so you can actually follow along as I'm talking with what subsection I'm referring to. In general, it's pretty straightforward, and what I want to do today is I want to just walk through briefly each subsection, and then I'm going to be giving you some examples of, what type of pitfalls someone might fall into as a board member with regards to potential violations of the School Ethics Act and what the response from the SEC might be, and we'll talk about those, and I'll be able to address any of your questions as we go through them. Generally speaking, the slide that's in front of you now is that these are just themes that we're going to see as we're walking through each of these subsections of the School Ethics Act. So generally speaking, the board, you guys all act as a unit. You're not acting as individual board members in your capacity as a board member. You guys are a board. So it's important to remember that you all are the governing body of the school district. You all are in charge of the high-level policy-making decisions, and you are an entity that takes action. You are not individual board members that are trying to take action, and you'll see this come up in a few of the subsections that we're going to discuss. You are the decision-making authority, limited and may not administer the schools. We'll have a whole section talking about not micromanaging, not trying to do the job of the superintendent or of the principal or whoever, that you guys are the ones that are really looking at everything from a 30,000-foot perspective, and you guys are making the big decisions in the district. So just jumping right into it, we have little titles for each of these. This one's just called Follow the Rules. The first couple are pretty straightforward. As a board member, you have to uphold and enforce all the rules and regulations of the state of and the Board of Education. You are not allowed to try to lone wolf any issues that come by your desk. You're not allowed to try to take things into your own hands. You have to go through the proper channels. You have to do, if an issue comes to you from a parent or from a community member, you have to relay those issues in a certain fashion. You have to follow the rules as your station as a board member. It's fairly straightforward. And just for a couple examples here, there have been violations of this in the past where a board member violated the code by trying to issue a rice notice to a district employee directly without taking the proper legal procedure. As many of you all know, and if you don't know, you will know very shortly, that when you are issuing a rice notice or you wish to discuss personnel or an employee at the district, that is something that the superintendent does. That is something where if you are concerned about an employee, you have to take that to the superintendent and they issue these notices. The only employee that you all manage is the superintendent himself. This also comes about when a board president violated the code when contacting a newly hired employee and told them that their appointment was void because he had directed the superintendent to remove the individual's name from the agenda, but the superintendent failed to do so. Again, not following the rules, not going through the proper channels. Subsection B, this is just something to keep in mind at all times while you guys are acting on the board, which is that the kids come first. The priority is always the children and the students of the district at all times. We see this subsection come up in SEC petitions when it is clear that the board member is trying to act in a way that is not student first. It is because they're trying to prioritize a friend or a family or an employee that they have close connections to. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're not sure if what you're about to do is ethically appropriate, if it doesn't in either directly or indirectly involve the students or your responsibilities as a board member, it's probably not. Example of this is a board member violated the code when she refused to leave the executive session while the board discussed a matter involving a member of her family. The issue there was that she wasn't really concerned about her duties as a board member to the students. It was because it was involving her own family. You're clearly not allowed to do that. This one a little bit lengthier, and you'll see that this violated a whole bunch of provisions. But while discussing the matter of an employee's actions and possible discipline in executive session, a board member had the BA distribute copies of a letter that the employee wrote to the board, but instructed the BA to not give a copy to the superintendent. The member stated that she had been in contact with the employee, had picked up the letter from the employee's home, noted that she was representing the employee because they are her friends, and questioned the accuracy of the superintendent's version of the incident and motivation for disciplining the employee, and indicated that the employee should not be treated this way. All of these, a whole bunch of problems here, of course, but clearly not student first. This is very much, her concern was her employee who she has some sort of personal connection to. Subsection C, generally speaking, we're looking at the big picture here. So subsection C and D are very similar, and often when we see petitions from the SEC, these two are almost always paired together. So I mentioned at the beginning of this that the board is looking at this from a 30,000-foot perspective. You guys are making the big decisions. You guys are doing the policy making. the planning, the appraisal. It is the board's job to make those big decisions and not try to manage the day-to-day operations of the school. So not try to manage individual employees, not try to manage individual complaints or concerns that parents may bring you. I often say that one of the biggest decisions that a board makes is the hiring of their superintendent. The reason why that is such a big decision is the superintendent is the one that you all manage and is the one who makes all of those individual day-to-day decisions for you. That's why you guys have a great superintendent, and that's why you pay him money to do that, is so that he can do the day-to-day managing. It is your guys' responsibility to take only kind of the big picture approach into play here. So an example we have here is that board members conducted a visit to assess a candidate for assistant superintendent without board authority. I mentioned earlier that no lone wolfing it as a board member. You're not allowed to go out and do your own thing. You guys act as a unit. This was clearly a violation of that. A board member violated the code by volunteering for a school club where a member had contact and control of students, personnel, resources, and administration, as well as received orders from district personnel and administration. This is one that we see fairly frequently, at least as questions that come by our office. A lot of times, board members, all of you are, despite what the public may say, are not in this just for the large paycheck of being a board member, but are instead doing this because out of the goodness of your own hearts and because you care about the community. You care about the students, you care about the schools, you care largely about this education in this process. So a lot of board members, because you're so proactive in this nature, want to be proactive with volunteering for a lot of different things. So we see a lot of times we have board members come up to us and ask, am I, as a board member, am I also allowed to volunteer for doing X, Y, and Z? And the answer is it depends, but typically what we're dealing with here is that you are not allowed to volunteer for activities within the school when it involves direct supervision of other students or other personnel. You can't take any type of supervisory capacity or have kind of consistent interaction with students while you're doing it. So what that means is you can't be a coach or an assistant coach for a sports team. But if the drama director were to reach out to you and said, we were looking for volunteers to help build props for a big play that's coming up, that is okay. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to get together with other parents or other volunteers to help out the community or help out the school still. You don't have to avoid all other actions. You just have to make sure that you're not doing anything that could possibly put you into conflict with your role as a board member. Subsection D is no micromanaging. I mentioned that C and D were paired. We almost always see that these come together, but it simply states that you will carry out your responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members, see that they are well run. Evidence of violation is that the board members gives a direct order to school personnel or becomes directly involved in activities or functions that are the responsibility of school personnel or the day-to-day administration of a school district or charter school. So here we have an example. Which was prior to being appointed to the board, a member was appointed to be a volunteer coach for a high school football team. Despite being appointed to the board, the member continued as a volunteer coach. The ethics committee found that simultaneously serving on the board and being a volunteer coach in the district violated the act, very similar to what we were just talking about. Another example, a board member would violate the act by participating in an exit interview or merely observing the exit interview, as it would breach the board member's obligation to refrain from being directly involved in activities that are the responsibility of school personnel and would equate the micromanaging of school personnel. So every once in a while, there will be questions that come by essentially asking, well, we have our concerns. We've heard a lot of concerns from the community about a certain teacher, or we had a lot of concerns about a staff member or a janitor. We want to be directly involved with the interviews or interactions that the administration has with that individual. You can't do that as a board member. That is considered micromanaging, and that is too much of the day-to-day operation of the school. That is why you hire such incredible employees to do all of that for you, and that you put your trust that they are doing that correctly. If there are concerns that it's not being done correctly, those are concerns that you bring to the superintendent. Those are concerns that you bring to the board president. These are not ones that you try to get involved in yourself. Subsection E, I like to call it I can't promise you that. This is a big one, and one that we see come up fairly often, and it is almost always done with the right intentions. whenever we see this subsection, it's usually not because someone is trying to be sneaky or had bad intentions. It's usually because a board member is trying to help out a community member or is trying to accomplish something that they truly believe is the right idea, but they're not doing it in the right way. And I want to give you a quick example of one that I had for a couple of years ago, where, and just, keeping it broad, is there was a board member who was very, very well known for being anti-bullying, and they very much against bullying, always took a stance on it. The community knew that, parents knew that, the school knew that. It was a mission of this individual's to stop bullying in schools. So what happened was, when a bullying incident happened, the parent knew that this was true of the board member and called the board member directly and said, listen, this is what's happening. I need you to do something about this. My child was shoved in gym class and was called names. This has to be in a certified HIB. Can you do something about this? And the board member said, of course we can do something about this. That's a horrible thing that happened to your student. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to launch an HIB investigation. We're going to get everyone involved. Can't do that because you can't promise that that's something that's going to be able to happen, and you're also not going through the right channels to do so. So there are a lot of issues with that type of example. And just by way of furthering that example, one of the problems is we don't necessarily know based on that whether or not it was a hit. We that under the state laws, shoving someone down and maybe calling them names doesn't necessarily rise to the level of hit. So you can't. It's dangerous to make these promises. But when you hear these types of things, when these complaints are brought to you, that is when you bring that to the superintendent or the board president. Here's an example. Board members violated the code when they made personal promises to a candidate for an assistant superintendent by advancing the possibility of his employment with the district and promising to resolve a contract issue for the district, which had the potential to compromise the board. I think it's fairly clear here that you can't do this. You can't make promises to possibly advance the employment of a potential assistant superintendent. Another one, board member communicated via private text messages with a staff member that resigned, offering to accuse the board president and the superintendent of malfeasance for failing to provide a rice notice and conspiring to undermine the board and the administration. The board member was reprimanded. This is a violation of not just this subsection, but several subsections, as we'll get to in a moment, as the board as a whole is supposed to act in unity and as a singular force that has a good image for the public. Subsection F, no special interest or personal gain. This one's fairly straightforward. This very much dives into having to conflict off of various resolutions that may come before you. But this is, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the school for personal gain or the gain of friends. And evidence of violation would be that a board member takes action on behalf of or at the request of a special interest group or persons organized and voluntarily united in opinion and who adhere to a particular political party or cause or uses the schools in order to acquire some sort of benefit for the member or the member's immediate family or friend. So here's an example. Board members may, well actually, I have this one first just to show that this is probably the most common question we get on this issue, which is that board members are allowed to endorse candidates for the board if the endorsement is made as a private citizen and not as a board member. You guys will probably learn this in your school board's training or already know this, but you have to always keep in mind that you're wearing the board member hat when you sit on the board. So when you guys make statements to the public or you're making an endorsement, you have to make sure that whatever you're saying, the public knows that you are making that as an individual private citizen, not on behalf of the board. Just something to always keep in mind. And that goes for public presentations and endorsements or social media posts as well, too, if you're saying something on social media. Subsection G is, of course, confidentiality issues. Definitely one of the more frequent concerns we see are the breaches in confidentiality. Happens a lot more than people think. Everyone thinks that whatever happens in executive session stays in executive session, but sometimes people will tell their spouses or will tell their significant others. You may be someone who knows everyone in the community and you'll think that it's okay to tell someone else, and then it gets everywhere and spreads like wildfire. So make sure that you hold all matters confidential pertaining to the schools, and especially with regards to student confidentiality and privacy. You guys will be hearing a lot of information, especially in the executive session, of things like HIB appeals or student concerns. All of that, of course, very confidential. Violation occurred when a board member was censured for responding to and having a social media message reposted over an alleged student discipline incident of a high school student. The message identified the student's school, grade level, gender, and specific details about the incident and the length of suspension imposed. This is a good reminder that simply not giving the name of a student does not mean that you are maintaining confidentiality, in the very similar way that if we were to have, let's say, a HIB investigation, that if we just took out the name of the student, we just redacted the name, that wouldn't mean it's confidential. There is, and FERPA gets into this a lot as well too. We have to frequently cite to it because anything that could be possibly identifying about the student could count as well. So if you were to go talk to one of your friends and say, yes, I won't tell you the name of the student, but I learned that there was this bullying incident. It was, the girl with the brunette hair that sat next to Jimmy in class. I mean, you may not be saying the name, but that's enough identifying information for the person you're talking to maybe know exactly who it is that you're talking about. So you always have to be very careful when you're talking about these things, and preferably not talking about them at all if you're talking to anyone else about it. Another issue was the board member violated the code by publicly posting confidential information that the staff member was removed from the school and hospitalized for a medical condition. Sometimes we see this when it's really out of good intentions. In your practice as a board member, it may come to you, especially if you are board president and the superintendent reaches out to you about someone that they have to put on leave because you might be the first to know about that. That type of information is very confidential, even if it seems like you want to just wish them well on Facebook or Instagram. You say, oh, I heard that you were in the hospital. I hope you're doing well. That type of information could be very sensitive information, and if it was disclosed to you in your capacity as a board member, you certainly can't be reposting it on social media platforms. Board member was reprimanded for inadvertently copying a community member on an email that was intended to go to the board members, wherein discussions that were held in executive session over a staff member and parents' complaint over a security issue were revealed. This was likely just a mistake. Just be very careful about your emails. And this is also a good time to remind you all to be careful about hitting reply all to emails as well too. You all may receive emails to the entire board may receive emails. Keep in mind that you cannot just hit reply all to these emails and have discussions back and forth about things, because that counts as board discussion. That would be like having a meeting like this. You're not allowed to do that. So please do not be in a situation where you're hitting reply all and trying to have a discussion over email with the entire board. That's why we have committees.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, and that would be any majority, correct? So it's not just the whole board.
Yes, any majority, yes. In the same way if you guys were meeting in public. I mean, or if you guys said, let's all get together and go out to dinner and discuss school stuff. If you had a majority, you wouldn't be able to do it. It would have to be noticed to the public. Yeah. Board member may continue as a freelance journalist, however, may not report on board issues and must ensure that no information was discussed or anything that was in executive session was disclosed. It's fairly obvious, it speaks for itself, but it's an interesting example of where someone who was still working in their capacity in their job, were still able to continue doing their job, but just had to be careful and tiptoe a little bit around what they were reporting. The board member would not violate the code by sending a letter to the editor expressing his opinion about the budget or making a statement to the press, so long as, in the letter, you do not hold yourself out as a board member and the information is accurate and not confidential. Confidentiality speaks for itself. The accuracy is important. You want to make sure that you're not saying anything that is blatantly inaccurate or defamatory, of course, because that could cause all other sorts of problems. But that you are allowed to, in your capacity as a private citizen, still make these statements. You don't lose your right. You don't lose your amendment rights to be able to make certain statements just because you are a board member. You're still allowed to speak about these things. Subsection H. This is always a fun one, which is listen to your superintendent's recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, you guys do a great job of seeking out superintendents. You got a great superintendent. you have hired someone who has a massive amount of experience in this and someone that you trust to try to administer the schools properly. Generally speaking, the superintendent's recommendations are something that you should be listening to and cognizant of, and I guess making sure that you give them the due weight. That does not mean, as we'll discuss in a second, that you have to always vote with what the superintendent's recommendation was. You guys are allowed to, as individual board members, vote the way that you truly feel it should be voted. But at the same time, we want to make sure that as a board, we have a sense of unity in that regard, and that we have a sense that there is faith placed in the people that you all are hiring to administer the schools. So here we have a board member may participate in an interview committee for candidates for high-level administrative and supervisory positions. However, the board member participation must be limited to offering observations and assessments, and the final recommendations are within the purview of the superintendent. There's a lot of decisions, especially with regards to other employee concerns or matters, with regards to hiring or discipline or whatever it is, that is strictly within the superintendent's purview. Kind of touching base again on that micromanaging issue, which is that these are the decisions that the superintendent makes, not you guys as the board as a whole or individually. That being said, as I mentioned earlier, the board members did not violate the code when they voted not to reappoint an employee to a former position, despite the contrary recommendation to the principal or the superintendent. You're still absolutely allowed to vote however you see fit at that time. If you feel that there is a routine habit of always kind of butting heads with the administration, that's something that has to be addressed with the administration. That's something that we should all sit down together and talk about. I do have a confession here, which is I stole this slide from one of the partners in my firm, and I asked him what Bartles and James were.
No.
He looked at me like I slapped him. Maybe all of you know, I mean, I'm the only one who didn't, but this was apparently some advertisement that ran for like wine coolers.
For
and
a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the very end of the ad, they did some kind of kitschy catchphrase where they say, "Thank you for your support," or something like that. Yeah, he told me to go look up a YouTube video on it. I didn't. So subsection I is generally getting to making sure that you are always trying to be in a supportive environment. That is why we're here. You want to support each other as board members. You want to support the board as a whole, and you want to support the administration that you put so much trust and faith into. An example we have here is that a board member violated the code by sending a letter to the superintendent, copying the State Board of Education and Executive County Superintendent, accusing the superintendent of allowing employees to violate board policy. This is the type of situation where if you have these concerns, you have to run it up the totem pole. You have to bring these concerns to the superintendent, to the rest of the board. That has to be something that's discussed that way. When something like this happens, it paints the board in a really bad light, and that's kind of what this subsection is getting at, which is you don't want to do things that usurp the trust of the public community with the board. If the sense is getting out there that board members are individually trying to make jabs or comments about the administration or about each other, it doesn't look good for the board, and that can actually be a violation of the school ethics code. The board member violated the code by sending an email to the superintendent that was also sent to the BA and all other board members, asking the superintendent to provide an accounting of her personal leave. It's not an appropriate way to get that information. Board president violated the code by posting a picture of the superintendent on Facebook with the comment, "Now if we could only do something about the local terrorists that destroy our dreams and burn futures." Obviously a terrible look for the district and for the board. It does not paint the board in a good light when you do things like this. You have to be very careful with social media. Use proper channels. I've been talking about this generally this entire time, but this is very much that you will refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. And when we say failure of an administrative solution, that doesn't necessarily mean they do something that you didn't quite agree with. This is like there have been complaints brought to the superintendent and nothing has been done for months, and they're just sitting on their hands and not responding to emails, not picking up the phone. That's when we're talking about like a failure of administrative solution. So if you disagree with one of those solutions, that's something you can have a discussion about, but that does not mean that you want to ambush the superintendent in open session by bringing up a new matter and having there suddenly be a massive fight going on the floor. Evidence of violation is a board member acts or tries to resolve a complaint or conducts investigation or inquiry before referring the complaint to the superintendent or other than at a public meeting and prior to failure of an administrative solution. A couple examples here. Board member violated the code by going to the principal directly in connection with a parent complaint rather than referring the complaint to the superintendent. And then the board member violated the code by not providing the superintendent with letters because he did not like the superintendent's management. Instead, the board went to other administrators to address these issues. You still have to go through the channels, even if you are afraid that the superintendent's not going to agree with your position on it. You still have to at least bring it to them first. So now getting a little bit into the conflicts. In New Jersey, and some of you may have been previously confused by this, there is the School Ethics Act has definitions for members of immediate family and relatives. This is with regards to when you have to conflict off certain issues that may come before the board, whether it's negotiations, superintendent contract, various things that you might be voting on for resolutions. But there's also the nepotism regulations, the state nepotism regulations by the state. If that sounds strange and confusing, it's because it is. We don't know why they have both of these and why they couldn't just refer to each other. But this gives you this slide, and you'll all have this, just gives you just kind of a definition of who falls under immediate family and who falls under relative. You'll notice that at the bottom of the left side here where it says others, it's kind of a catch-all because it refers to the nepotism regulations that you see on the right there too with regards to relative. So just getting a little bit more into that, this is a very handy chart that if you're ever worried that there could be a conflict, you can help rely on this. And if you're still confused, or if you fall under one of those maybe categories, talk to Rich, and if need be, they'll consult with us on this. If you have an immediate family member who is in district and working, for example, as a board member, you have a spouse that works as a teacher in district or is under the board as an aide or something like that, there's clearly a conflict there. So you have to conflict out of a lot of the negotiations that take place with the union, and you have to conflict out of potentially anyone who is their supervisor. So that could be the principal, the superintendent, things like that. Out of district, if it's an immediate family member, it's still a conflict. The idea being that if they are in the same statewide union, but they're working as a teacher in a different district, that is still a conflict that you have to conflict off of various things that come before the board, such as negotiations with that union. And I'll add under where you see the maybes with regards to relative and other, there's a couple kind of caveats carved out of there that it could go either way. It depends on whether or not they could be, and these are just examples, but whether or not they are an officer in the NJEA, or whether or not they have some sort of leadership role, or can influence whatever negotiations are happening over wherever they work. There's other things that other variables that you have to take into consideration at that time. This is just a general recommendation to complete your training requirement. If you don't, you get nasty letters, so you want to avoid that. We often get questions on substitutes, so I just included an advisory opinion on this. But it essentially advised that where a board member's spouse is employed as a substitute teacher in district, the board member may not participate in any personnel matters of those in the chain of command over their spouse. I've mentioned a few times, be very careful with social media, just really careful. I'm not a big social media person myself, but I know a lot of folks are. So really, really think twice before you post on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that you use. Even if you are not referencing board issues, like I'm not saying that, don't post, this is what happened in executive session today, that's a problem. But if you are about to post things that are very inflammatory, statements that could really cause a lot of drama, cause a mess online, so to speak, really think twice before doing that, and I would really recommend that you don't do it, because if you do anything that paints you in a bad light, it paints the board in a bad light, and that's where we sometimes get petitions coming in. And I think we have a few examples of that as well. Board member was censured for responding to and having a social media message reposted over an alleged student discipline incident of a student. The message identified the students. I believe this is the same one that we had earlier. Yeah. So this was also fell under this category. Both of these found that 2 board members violated the act when they posted on Facebook that a substitute teacher, who was running for election, was unemployed and engaged in misconduct as a substitute teacher, notwithstanding the fact that the statements were not true and actually applied to another teacher. The commission found that the board members violated the provisions and issued a reprimand. These 2 found that board member violated the act when he had posted offensive posts on his personal Facebook page that were anti-Muslim. Although it was found that the posts were on his personal Facebook page, were not made in a capacity as a board member, and the contents of the posts were personal opinions, the board members still violated the act as it was a private action that may compromise the board and undermine public trust. Member was only censured because he had not run for re-election, therefore removal was not an option. So generally speaking, everyone should read and become familiar with the Code of Ethics, and also sign the written acknowledgement that you all have in front of you so that we can keep record of that. And that's it. So of course, if anything comes up, you're always welcome to ask your board president, ask Rich. If it's something that is still, and you know, Rich has been around the block, so he may be able to answer a lot of your questions as to whether or not, you know, something may be an ethics issue, but in case they're not, he can elevate it to us, and we can try to figure that out as well. So I'm happy to take questions now. If you feel more comfortable relaying those questions later, we can always talk later as well. Anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So if it's a one-off situation where you're helping out with a sport, let's say, is it okay to be in charge of money? Like if you're collecting money for snacks or whatever for athletes, would that be something to probably not jump in?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no. It's with good intention, but it would be better to see if there's someone else who's available to do that, and if there's something else that you could do instead, that would probably be best. Yeah.
Jacob, which that was the point. What about
Boosters. If we're involved in booster clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, same thing. Just
Same
steer away
thing.
from
I
that.
wouldn't be the one who deals with the money itself, and I wouldn't be the one who is in any type of supervisory capacity of the booster club. But if you're just helping out here and there and not having constant interaction with students and not giving orders, so to speak, it would be fine.
I have a question.
Of course.
Can board members make donations to these clubs?
That's interesting. I believe they can. Yes. Let me double check on that for
As a
you.
parent,
well, they're
or
always
as a
asking
parent, you
for
should be able to.
As an individual, yes, not as on behalf of the board. Yeah, and I should clarify, not on behalf of the board, certainly. Like, you can't say the board is making a donation to this club. But as an individual parent in your individual capacity, yes, I believe you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like a yearbook ad, you give as a parent.
Yes, in your capacity as a parent, yes. And I can double check it, but but my off-the-cuff answer is I think that should be fine. Yeah. Yes.
So in your section on not running the school, the micromanaging part, your examples were about staff hiring kind of stuff. Do you have other examples, kind of more like fiscal aspects, decisions that are made? That always, there's a lot of stuff that comes in front of the board.
Sure.
That could be really, picked apart.
Sure. Let's see. You guys, it would be appropriate for the board to vote on a resolution that potentially, let's say a company wants to take out an advertisement on one of the fields, one of the sports arenas, and they say, okay, here's $5,000 for that. You guys can decide whether or not to accept or deny that as part of a resolution. But then getting your hands mixed into exactly how that $5,000 is applied, and should it be applied to should it be applied to that field's team? Should it be applied to a teacher's salary here? How do we manage that? That might be a little bit too much. The finance committee could possibly deal with that, but that could get into the realm of administrative prerogative of exactly where each dollar is going, so to speak. If that makes sense.
I actually have, I remember an example that was brought up in one of the previous sessions like this, where they talked about a board member had an issue with, there was a security issue, that they felt like there was a security issue, and then that person went to the principal and made them bring them around and to do their own basically due diligence to see if it was a safety issue. And
I think I recall that. Yeah. The issue was that someone brought to their attention a possible security concern, so they went onto the school themselves and started taking pictures of where they thought all the security concerns were. That was an inappropriate thing to do as well. That was considered micromanagement.
Just, was this printed from the website or?
That's ours. No, that's,
Okay.
I believe our firm generated that.
Okay, should I, yeah, there's two J's, so should I cross out the
Oh.
one that's an I and then sign it?
Yes, that's fine, you can do that. And actually, we also have a different version of that too, in case that, I guess we could do, but yeah, feel free just to cross out the letter and sign it. It's for the retention by the district. All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, check out.
Katie, would you like those collected now?
If you can sign them now and pass them in, that'd be great. If not, I can collect them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very informative.
That was good.
Okay, moving forward, we are going to take a motion and second to approve action items 9.1 through 9.13.
So, second.
I was Beth and
And Dan.
Dan. Any discussions? I have a discussion. Katie, on 9.8, I went to and Tara can back me, we went to the delegate meeting. They did have this discussion, it was passed on the floor for, their support, and JSBA is supporting, there's no more newspapers, the Star Ledger, so we're just waiting now on legislation.
So now it's a waiting game to get updated legislation, because the one that's on the, been passed right now is only until, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the end of February.
Yeah.
So they're enacting some sort of legislation after that point. So I was gonna say the same thing, which is, for right now, we still have to appoint our official newspapers, because even from now until that time of legislation expiring, we still need to advertise, whether it's in print or it's electronic. We'll still need to have that resolution in the system, but most likely by March, we should have
It'll
updated
be digital.
legislation, and yeah, exactly, there'll be more language that we
So
can
they
add to
told
it.
us, they were actually pushing delegate, they said they were hoping by the end of January to have it before February. I was like,
Because they did the temporary legislation, it just means they're kicking it a little
So
further.
then
I would imagine it.
this will come up again and we will take another
Exactly.
vote.
Yep. For
Okay.
right now, though, we're going to act as business as usual.
Okay.
Just to comment on that too, so I had also sent a note, just to make everyone aware, a note to Rich earlier today, because we're readopting the policies. And I wasn't sure if we were doing that because we're going to be we're doing the New Jersey School Board policies, but I guess until those policies are in place, we need to readopt the existing ones. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
Yeah, we did get, I got notice from school boards today, they are sending us a zip drive with the
Okay.
policy manual on. As soon as I get it, I'll get it up there for, where we'll
Great.
be on the policy committee and we'll review it, and then that will replace what we're reappointing tonight.
Perfect.
Excellent.
If you look at policy 0154, those are the annual motions, and it always says that you have to readopt your bylaws and policies. So this is just kind of the standard resolution, and then when we move forward.
Because I'm assuming it will be just strictly, by that time, digital. I don't know if they're going to drop off the
Actually, at the end of
paper.
January, it's supposed to be digital. So there is going to be a time period where it would be great to put it in paper, but it's going to end up being digital.
We still have the Hunterdon Democrat, correct, I think?
They're
There are
doing
counties that
electronic.
don't have any.
Really?
So that was what the discussion was.
So the only other notation I would just have in your mind is that I did have to change the March meeting date. So when you open up 9.12, we got the updated school budget calendar from the state, obviously last minute as they typically do. So I had to revise the March meeting date 1 week prior to what we had originally scheduled. So I will be getting that published as soon as possible so we can get that in print, and then we'll see if we have any other edits after that. But
Okay.
I wouldn't anticipate anything after that point.
Okay. Everyone have that? Any other questions? Okay, roll call vote.
Dr. Dini?
Yes?
Ms. Cagley?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Ms. Hintz?
Yes.
Ms. Cotran?
Yes.
Mr. Lordy?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Spanton?
Yes.
Ms. Beato?
Yes.
And Ms. Lino?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, moving on, at this time, we'll have opportunity for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the school board with questions or comments. The public is requested to sign the register provided for this purpose and to state their name, municipality of residence, group affiliation if applicable, and direct their comments to the school board president. While all comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming, if and when appropriate, school board members will not respond to the speakers at the time of their appearance. The public comment period will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length unless there are unusual circumstances. Those appearing will be allocated 3 minutes to speak, and no one will be permitted to speak twice until those that have not yet had an opportunity to speak have had a turn.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Cochran. I'm from Clinton Township, New Jersey. First and foremost, congratulations to the newly elected board members, and welcome back to those who are returning. I'm here tonight to remind the board that your job is to ensure that our students receive a quality education. We come to school from 7:45 a.m. to 2:25 p.m. every day to get a quality education from people who are highly knowledgeable in their craft. While our parents and other community members are a valued voice in this North Hunterdon-Voorhees community, they're not directly impacted by decisions you make within this room. We are. So as a student here, I urge you to continue protecting our education and all facets of said education. Furthermore, our students have rights as individuals, the greatest of which is the right to an education as outlined in the New Jersey Constitution. Additionally, we are also guaranteed the right to read and the right to express ourselves how we see fit by the United States Constitution. We are not exempt from our First Amendment constitutional rights just because we're inside our school. We're American citizens like you, and we appreciate and enjoy our rights just like you do. Our students and staff put their trust in you to provide them with the tools and resources required to give students a proper education. Please don't break that trust. Thank you.
Good evening. It is an honor to be here this evening, particularly in light of a young person, a student, who is attending.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you let us know your name and who's...
Oh, I'm terribly
It's okay.
sorry.
It's okay. Who you-
I did write it. Marina Bartelli of Franklin Township. Two of my kids are North graduates. So again, it's an honor to be here and to watch the workings of a Board of Education. I'm sure you're all aware of the gravity of the responsibility that you hold for educating the students in this district. And again, well-spoken for the student, Stephen. So that being said, I do value education. I value leadership that has qualifications and experience and the wisdom and common sense to make a path forward, and a board that can work together in the best interest of the students. To that end, I'd like to read a quote from social media. "We live in a flat dome. The heliocentric model is false." I wonder if any of you are aware of the individual in this room who is recently, just now elected vice president, that's their social media. I hope There will be no buyer's remorse. Congratulations.
Any other public comments? Thank you. I'm going to call for a motion second to adopt Resolution 010725-10 for executive session to discuss matters falling under Category 8 as reflected in the attached resolution. The board expects to be in exec session for approximately 30 minutes, and upon return to public session, action will be taken.
So moved.
Second. And Nicole? Voice vote, sorry.
I'll get it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And abstentions? Don't come to me.
It's like riding a bike.
It's been a long time.
Like riding a bike.
Discussion?
So moved.
Second.
That was Jessica and Nicole?
Yes.
And we need a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Call for a motion second to approve agenda item 13.1 and we're including hand carries. Do I need to, no hand carries?
So moved. Second.
That was Christina and Tara. And I need a roll call vote.
Ms. Cagnon?
Yes.
Dr. Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Ms. Gallo?
Yes.
Ms. Hintz?
Yes.
Ms. Potran?
Yes.
Mr. Lordy?
Yes.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Ms. Selena?
Yes.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes.
Ms. Beato?
Yes.
Okay, you good? Call for a motion second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.